Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into a seriously high-stakes battle. We're talking about historic architecture going toe-to-toe with the relentless, completely unseen forces of nature. Now, we are not just talking about a spilled glass of water or a leaky kitchen faucet here. We're demystifying the catastrophic, invisible threats that can literally tear an older home apart from the inside out. We're going to use the unique environmental and architectural challenges of Arlington as our case study today to understand exactly how water destroys, and honestly, more importantly, the really rigorous science of how a home is brought back to life.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because the sheer speed of this threat is, well, it's terrifying. Imagine waking up at 2 in the morning to the sound of rushing water. A single burst pipe, the kind usually tucked away in some unheated attic or hidden behind drywall, it doesn't just drip. Driven by municipal water pressure, it violently releases hundreds of gallons of water per hour into your home. Within minutes, that water is migrating through your floors, soaking into the walls, and creating a massive structural emergency. This absolutely isn't a problem you can just put off until Monday morning. It's an immediate, ticking clock.
So to combat a disaster of this magnitude, we need a strategic, step-by-step rescue plan. Today, we're looking at Arlington's unique water threats, the categories of water contamination, the critical 60-minute emergency response, the science of restoration, signs of hidden damage, and finally, navigating costs and recovery.
Let's start with Section 1, Arlington's unique water threats.
You see, Arlington, Massachusetts is the absolute perfect microcosm for understanding urban water threats because it sits right at the intersection of aging infrastructure and completely unpredictable New England weather. Its specific quirks actually create a perfect storm for water intrusion. Think about it, you have incredibly dense neighborhoods featuring these beautiful historic homes built largely between 1890 and 1950. A lot of these structures rely on old stone foundations that completely lack modern waterproofing. Add to that the harsh winter freeze-thaw cycles that expand and crack those old foundations or rupture uninsulated pipes. And then there's the ground itself. Arlington sits right in the Mystic River watershed, and the soil around areas like Spy Pond is incredibly heavy in clay. And clay just doesn't drain well. It basically acts like a giant bowl holding onto all that spring snowmelt and summer storm water right against the side of these older homes.
So, the crucial point here is, when that water inevitably finds its way inside, you only have a 48-hour window. That's it. That is the critical timeline mandated by health codes and building science before highly destructive microbial growth and mold colonies begin to permanently establish themselves in the damp environment of your home. If mitigation doesn't start within those 48 hours, a straightforward water extraction job quickly transforms into a full-blown hazardous materials situation. And worst of all, insurance companies might even deny your coverage. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly is that water forcing its way in? Well, it's through an invisible, relentless physical force called hydrostatic pressure. When prolonged, heavy rainfall saturates that poorly draining Arlington clay, the water literally has nowhere to go. So it builds up immense weight and pressure against your basement foundation walls. It is actively pushing against the concrete and stone, relentlessly seeking out microscopic cracks, window wells, or floor wall joints until it bursts through, flooding finished basements and pretty much destroying everything in its path.
Which brings us to Section 2, categories of water contamination.
And this brilliantly illustrates a really important concept. Not all water is created equal. Professionals actually categorize the threat into 3 distinct levels. Category 1 is clean water. Think of a burst supply pipe. It's incredibly damaging, sure, but it is sanitary. Category 2 is gray water. Picture an overflowing washing machine or dishwasher. It contains chemicals or biological matter that could definitely make you sick. And then we have Category 3, widely known as black water. This is highly dangerous stuff. It comes from sewage backups or outdoor floodwaters rushing into a basement, and it carries aggressive bacteria, viral pathogens, and nasty soil contaminants. The restoration protocols drastically change when you hit Category 3, often requiring full-scale demolition of affected materials just to keep the occupants safe.
Moving on to Section 3, the 60-minute emergency response.
Knowing what kind of water you're dealing with entirely dictates the reaction. This brings us to that frantic, critical window right after a disaster strikes. If you're ever unlucky enough to be in this situation, you are going to hear 2 industry terms thrown around constantly, and knowing the difference empowers you: mitigation versus restoration. Mitigation is the triage phase. It is the immediate emergency response to stop the bleeding, so to speak, extracting standing water, boarding up broken windows, bringing in the initial drying equipment. The whole goal is simply to prevent further loss. Restoration? Well, that's the cure. That comes later. It's the complete repair process, rebuilding walls, replacing floors, and bringing the home completely back to its pre-damaged condition. Let's actually walk through the timeline of that triage because it emphasizes exactly why local experts, like First Choice Water Damage Restoration Boston, guarantee a 60-minute dispatch. Every single minute counts. In the first 0 to 60 minutes, crews are deployed. Immediately upon arrival, they fire up these massive truck-mounted extraction units to pull thousands of gallons of standing water out of the house. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, remember, they are fighting the clock to establish that microbial prevention window. And then from days 3 to 14, they're engaged in the long game of material-specific drying.
That leads us into Section 4, the science of restoration.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it dispels a massive myth. Professionals don't just show up, point some really loud fans at a wet carpet and call it a day. No way. They rely on the IICRC certified science of psychrometry. This is the rigorous science of exactly how moisture behaves in air and porous materials. Technicians actively measure the temperature, the humidity, and the internal moisture content of materials like your structural framing and subfloors. They literally use complex math to calculate the exact dehumidifier capacity needed to pull deeply trapped moisture out of the physical structure of your home.
So how do they physically pull this off? Well, it's a very strict three-phase flow. Phase 1 is that aggressive emergency water extraction we talked about. Phase 2 is structural drying and monitoring. This is where psychrometry comes in, combined with advanced thermal imaging cameras that can literally see water trapped behind drywall that looks totally dry to the naked eye. Commercial air movers create this massive vortex of dry air, while dehumidifiers pull hundreds of pints of water out of the environment every single day. Finally, Phase 3 is the antimicrobial treatment and verification. They use EPA-registered treatments to make sure absolutely no mold spores survive, and then follow it up with documented mathematical proof that the building has reached a safe moisture threshold.
Now for Section 5, signs of hidden damage.
So what if you don't have a massive, catastrophic pipe burst? What if the water intrusion is just a slow, sneaky leak over several months? I really want you to ask yourself, what is hiding behind your walls right now? It's a pretty alarming thought, right? But it's crucial. A slow drip from a roof penetration or an aging copper pipe buried in an exterior wall can quietly rot your structural framing and cultivate massive mold colonies long before you ever see a single drop of water. To find these invisible threats, you basically have to act like a detective looking for really subtle sensory clues. Keep an eye out for bubbling wallpaper or peeling paint. That is literally moisture trying to escape through the wall. Look down at your hardwood floors. If the edges of the planks are raised up, a condition professionals call cupping, it means they are absorbing moisture from underneath. Also, pay close attention to persistent, musty odors, unexplained condensation on your inside windows, or honestly, even just a mysteriously high water bill. These are the physical and financial red flags, telling you that water is silently destroying your property.
Finally, Section 6, navigating costs and recovery.
Obviously, discovering all this damage is incredibly stressful. But let's move out of the emergency phase and see how this builds into the logistics of financial recovery and getting your life back to normal. A huge part of professional restoration isn't just the heavy lifting, it's the paperwork needed to build a completely bulletproof insurance claim. A certified team is going to meticulously document the progression of the damage using that thermal imaging and moisture mapping we mentioned. They coordinate directly with your insurance adjuster, providing incredibly transparent estimates that align with strict industry standards. This is vital because it ensures homeowners aren't left holding the bag with denied claims just because of missing technical documentation. And once it's all finished, you receive a written certification of safe occupancy. That is the ultimate peace of mind.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this one provocative question to think about. If a pipe burst in your home tonight, are you prepared to beat that 48-hour countdown? Knowing the science, understanding the risks, and respecting the sheer speed required to mitigate disaster, that is for sure the best defense you can possibly have. Stay dry out there, stay prepared, and we'll see you in the next explainer.